Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. This is Blair Sinta. This week I'm recording this intro from a hotel room just to keep the podcast moving. I'm talking to Jake Reed this week. Jake is a really fabulous drummer, lives in LA, studied with Peter Erskine, went to USC. He's played with Bill Cunliffe, Seth MacFarlane, Adam Levy, Larry Goldings. Jake is just a fantastic drummer, and he's really got a great YouTube presence going, talking about recording drums. You can learn a lot of things there through Jake's website, Jake's YouTube. And we just had a really fun conversation. He's recording down in his basement garage here in LA, and we talk a lot about his upcoming upbringing, and traveling with Peter Erskine to different sessions and learning a lot through that way. And then, of course, we get into a lot of his recording techniques, sounds, and things that he's able to do in his room. So let's check out Jake. And if you like the podcast, please give it ratings, share it to your friends. If you're on YouTube, please leave comments, share it. And last but not least, if you are interested in just being involved with what I do, you can go to my website, and I have a new PDF download for you. It's my essential audio gear and just things that people ask me a lot about: microphones, headphones, even my sticks that I like to use. So check that out, www.blairsinta.com. Without further ado, Jake Reed.
Yes. Here we go.
Kirkland's finest.
There we go. Oh, wow. Maybe we can get an ad from Kirkland up front. That'd be great. Who sponsors this podcast? Costco.
Costco now selling SM57s.
That's right. Hey.
At a slightly lower price, but you have to buy 100 of them.
Yeah. Or at least 8 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I saw a picture yesterday of Picaro. Like someone took a picture of Picaro's kit from like the 70s, and there was a 57 on every drum and overheads.
The overheads were 57s?
I think they were. Yeah. It was like, and then there was like a 421 in the bass drum.
Yes, that's my new thing actually. 421 in the bass drum. Dude, I love it.
That's what they do at Fox,
Yeah.
Like Family Guy and all that stuff. They're not putting like 3 mics on the. It's a 421 in the bass drum.
You've been doing some.
That's how you mic the bass drum, huh?
You've been doing some Family Guy?
No. I went to a session there once.
Oh.
I'm not about to start dropping gig names. No.
Well, I figured maybe you sub for Erskine or something.
Not on that.
Okay.
I'm not sure that Peter does that. I think he's done Family Guy. I'm not sure.
No, he was playing in Seth MacFarlane's big band, so I figured maybe he did the show too.
Yeah, and I've subbed on that gig a couple times, which was super fun.
Okay.
But I bet he's done. I'd have to go back. Every once in a while when I do watch Family Guy, I'm like, is that something like Peter or is that?
Yeah.
Sorry, to get back to your question, I totally did a tangent there. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm in the basement. I'm in the basement down here.
You have a basement?
Well, it's kind of like a half basement. Like, so this wall back here goes into the earth. Like this is up against.
That's good.
But the front is not.
Okay.
So it's kind of like.
What's the front? Are you looking at something?
Yeah, here, let me show you. This will explain things a little further. Like, so there's this wall.
Okay.
And then it's just outside.
Oh. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, wow, you got a full window right there, and that's okay?
Yeah, I have a blind that comes down.
A soundproof blind?
It's not soundproof, but it's pretty, it's thick enough to where there's not like, I wish. But that glass is like, I think it's 3/8 of an inch thick.
Okay.
So it's like studio glass.
Do you ever mic the glass? That's kind of a serious question.
Honestly, I haven't tried, but I kind of want to now.
Okay.
See, I'm gonna learn more from this podcast than
For that
you are.
glassy Phil Collins sound, man. That late '80s. Come on, man.
Just put a couple 57s right up against
There you
that.
go. That's right, man. That's right. That's cool.
Who's
So
the guy? Wasn't that what they did on like that? Not the glass, but that's like a thing. Like, was it that Robert Palmer song? Simply Irresistible.
Right.
I seem to remember someone telling me that was like most of that snares, like that drum sound is like two mics up against a wall.
Well, you know, it's funny because the power station thing, I think that's all, I could be wrong. I think it's all Tony Thompson, that era stuff.
Yeah. I think he's the drummer on that, right?
Yeah, I think so. And then, but in the whole power station, Some Like It Hot, like
I love that.
Like the room is
that, right?
pitched down in that. So they were doing all kinds of wacky stuff in that. Part of that crazy ass sound of that drum thing is a pitched down room. So
I didn't know it was pitched down.
yeah, just the room.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a chorusy sort of effect in a weird way. Yeah.
Exactly. And I've tried to get that sound. I actually did a pretty good job. Made a video of it, and it's I didn't learn that till after the fact, but there's this super weird grainy thing to it.
It makes sense.
It turns out that it's pitched down. So yeah.
One sec.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jake Reed. There we go.
There we go.
So you're in this house. How long have you been in there?
We've been here almost 6 years.
Oh, okay. With this room?
With this room.
Okay.
Which is constantly developing. Do you put this on your YouTube channel? Like if I'm saying like, look at that thing.
Yep.
Awesome. So you'll get to, you can. So if I walk around.
Yes.
And like do a little quick tour.
Show us the goods.
Yeah. That's a good idea. Can we do that now?
Yeah. Let's do that now.
Okay. Hey guys.
Walk slow for the connection. I know you're going to help me add personality to my YouTube channel.
Oh my God. I'm so bad. I don't know. I just act funny. There's my wife's car. Pretty cool.
Yep.
Okay, so here's where all the magic happens.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks like this when I'm sitting here playing.
Look like you're in jazz mode right now.
I was yesterday. I did 3 tracks for a guy, and the third track
Ooh,
super jazzy.
I like that.
Yeah, I was not playing. I wasn't doing anything.
That's okay. I have my double kick pedal up. It's okay.
I always have it set up.
Yeah. Yep. Compression.
Yeah. So that's this. This used to be Peter's bass drum.
Oh, I recognize that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's such a nice.
So those are some OG recording customs, huh?
Well, these are just Gretsch toms.
Right.
But this kit, I have the whole kit of it, which I'll show you in a second.
I've seen it on the tube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're great drums, man. I'm telling you.
I kind of want some.
If you can find them.
I know, right?
I mean, they're pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They're super rad. Okay, so this is where I sit when I play, and then I just do it like I have like Bluetooth. Everything's connected via Bluetooth here, the trackpad and the keyboard.
Okay.
And then it's just hooked up to my computer over there. And then I have a second screen here.
Yep.
You know how it is learning how to read waveforms
For editing. Yep.
when no one sends you, well, just when I'm recording too.
Oh.
Because if a lot of people don't send charts, so
right.
I mean, besides just memorizing it really fast, it's just like also being able to see like, oh, that looks like it's like a chorus is about to come up.
Wow, so you don't even learn songs anymore. You've taken it a step further. Home recording. I like it, dude. I just learned something. Don't even learn the song and just watch the waveform.
I mean, honestly, it's almost like sight reading. It's like to me, it's another form of sight reading.
Oh, this is awesome. I love it.
I'm serious. No, it's like
I can tell you're serious.
It's one thing to like chart it out, but if you can just it's like sight reading. but you're just watching waveforms.
For all the young drummers that may listen to this, I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I love it. But so far, this is the most entertaining podcast I've done. You win, Jake. This is awesome.
No, but I'm being serious. Like I know how to, I know how to read music, and
I know you know. I know.
And,
don't worry, I'm going to
and
give
I
you a
have to
good
do that.
introduction before this, so
And I
everyone
would
knows.
prefer, yeah, and I would actually prefer to read a real chart.
Right.
But sometimes when people send me songs to play on, and there's like a bunch of hits or something,
Yep.
or they want me to replace their drum beat exactly, and I don't want to sit there. I don't want to spend the first hour of the session like writing, like transcribing a drum beat,
Right.
and like, oh, they want, like, because sometimes you know how it is. People want you to replace like their program stuff exactly.
Yeah.
Which I'm totally fine doing that. If that's what they want, we're in the service industry. That's what we do, and that's fine.
Right.
But I would much rather just read it as it goes by on the screen here, right there.
So you're saying if you have a MIDI thing, you'll literally read the MIDI notes as they go by.
Heck yeah.
Wow. I've
Yeah.
never thought of that. I mean, I like that idea, especially on those, because sometimes I get, similar thing. I get tracks, and sometimes they're like, "Can you do the exact thing that I programmed?" And I'm like, "Whoa, okay, great idea." Yeah.
And it's a different thing. Like, if someone wants you to just do your own thing, that's fine too. And in that case, I don't need to sit there and read the screen as it's going by. You can listen to it, and
Right.
part of being a good sight reader is having a good memory.
You mean
Just
from things you've previously crammed into your brain?
Yeah. Well, and also just as you're reading, you're kind of memorizing what's going by, so that if there's something in the chart that's missing, you can,
That's true. Right.
Yeah.
You go back and you make your note after, right? Because I was
exactly
thinking, as you were saying that, I was thinking like, wow, my head is like a sieve, because if I read things, it's like, wait, now I have to read it forever,
Yeah. It's
No, I know what you mean, but you're learning as you go, and you make your marks later to say, okay, hey, this hit's coming up, or this dynamic change is coming up. Set it up right with the right fill.
Yeah, or whoever wrote this chart, the copyist forgot to put this one hit in there,
Right.
this one rhythm. So I need to go back in and
Right.
I got to make a note of that,
Right.
because I should catch that.
Right.
So yeah, so that's where I sit. You saw what it looks like. I'll give you the quick tour here. Hopefully I don't get disconnected. There's all my percussion stuff.
Move slow. We're good.
I just built this shelf.
Oh wow, look at that.
My dad came to town
Mm-hmm.
last week, and we built a shelf.
Do you play tabla?
I don't. I just bought these. And I'd like to learn, though, because they're so cool. And every once in a while, people ask if I can play, like, hey, do you have tabla? Can you play on this? And I'm like, I'm so bad at tabla. I don't even, it sounds good. I kind of just play them like congas.
Right. Right. No, they do make a cool tone, even if when you're lame and you just hit it. Like,
yeah. So I kind of do my lame version, but it's all about the sound. So
right.
I would like to learn, and I kind of learned, like, takadimi, like that kind of stuff a long time ago, but I should get some lessons. If anyone out there gives tabla lessons.
There's this guy named Zakir Hussein. You should probably look him up.
Does he give lessons?
Not to people like us.
So here's the drum hallway. Drums.
Nice. Yep.
Drum machines.
Yep.
Castanets.
Cool.
Hopefully I don't lose you here. If I do, I'm sorry.
Yep. Snare drum wall.
Snare drum wall.
Yeah.
It's a mess because I just put the shelf in. So
great.
You know what my project is later today?
Yeah.
Keeping a tidy studio. So that's basically it.
All right. So
and I'll show you. My wife plays piano and keyboards.
Oh wow. Beautiful.
So her room is here. There's the piano.
Her room is so much nicer than yours.
I know. Well, it's a thing.
I get it.
So that's her room. Anyway,
So wait, you put a mic in there sometimes? Wait, all right, wait.
I do.
I'll ask you this later. Okay, so your room is very small. Tell me about recording in your room, and because I know that you're getting really good sounds, tell me.
Yeah. So
Just tell me about the room and your challenges in there.
okay, so the first challenge of my room is it's small.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just put this back up in here. First challenge of my room is that it's small and the ceilings are low. You know, it's not a very. I wish that's like the one thing I wish I had a higher ceiling, but the ceiling's only about 7.5 or 8 feet tall.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yep.
And the whole room I think is about 12 by 18.
Okay. Yeah.
But the pro of that whole situation, pros and cons, it's super tight sounding in here. So if you need that, like I just did that sample pack, super dead drums.
Yep.
It's like if you're in here and you need that sound,
Yep.
I can do that.
Right.
You know, like no problem, like with minimal amounts of processing.
Right.
It just automatically sounds like that.
That's great.
But yeah, the con of all of that is if I need anything with nice ambience or like a bigger room sound,
Yep.
I have to get creative, which is part of having a home studio, is getting creative with how you get sounds, you know?
Right. So what are your creative moves there, brah?
So a couple of creative moves to get when I got to get bigger sounds or just more space. I'll put a mic in Kate's room, or you know, a stereo mic.
Mm-hmm.
And her room sounds. I mean, if I went in there and clapped, you know, you'd be like, "Oh, that does sound nice."
So you can still get a stereo image even though it's around the corner, kind of.
Not really.
Okay.
But at least it's 2 mics, you know.
Okay.
And
it's ambient.
And it's ambience. Yeah, it's basically like natural reverb, you know.
Right. Okay.
It's not. Yeah, I wouldn't call it like a nice stereo, like you're in a big studio or something.
Right. Okay.
But
it does the trick. For
that's what reverb is for.
Right. Yeah. It is.
So that's one move. A second move is I have a transient designer here.
Yep.
Just like outboard. You have one too, right?
That's the key to everything for me. Yep.
Yeah, totally. So I probably learned that from you.
You might have.
But yeah, so that's the thing. I do that. I have an 1178.
Excellent. Yeah.
Which I'll just put on rooms, which sounds awesome.
Yep.
Sometimes I have to be careful about it because some people don't like it when you over compress the rooms, and
yep.
So I try to leave them alone.
Yep.
Most of the time, unless I get like, you know, creative freedom to, when someone says, "Yeah, just do it," and I'm like, "Okay," but you're saying it.
Right.
And then, you know,
I think usually it fits the drum sound too, right?
Yeah.
So,
like it's like if it's going to get compressed anyway.
Yeah.
And it actually helps because then when you're listening to yourself playing that way,
right,
you know how it is. Like, you know, not to hit the cymbals as hard, things like that.
Yeah, and it's not like you're going to send some roomy big band thing with super compressed mics that you just wouldn't do that. Yeah.
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 But musically appropriate compression.
Right. So that's another thing I'll do. Sometimes I'll put a mic down the hallway.
Okay.
Where we just were.
Yep.
Sometimes I'll put a mic in the garage, which was, you saw where that fan was blowing.
Okay, that's probably a cool sound.
It's a very cool sound. So sometimes like on some really like, you know, grungy sounding rock stuff, or I did that a couple weeks ago on like a guy sent me a song. He was like, it's kind of a, you know, like, you know, 90s, like early 2000s rock. And here's the ref. And I didn't even listen. I didn't even click on it. I knew it was going to be that Blur song.
Right.
Yeah.
Song number 2.
Yep.
Yep.
Because I listened to the song first before I clicked on the reference. I was like, oh yeah, of course.
Right.
So like that, and that worked. It sounded awesome. So
have you ever actually put a kit in the garage with like 2 mics?
Man, I haven't. I bet it's awesome though.
You got to get brave one day and like just for one take, know the song, go out there, annoy your neighbors, and then just be done.
Literally garage rock.
Literally. Well, I don't know if you've seen there's like a YouTube thing of Bradley Cook talking about recording the song My Hero for the Foo Fighters Color and the Shape. And it's a double drum track. It's all Dave, but it's a double drum track. And the second drum track is them. They went into this parking lot thing of Grandmaster and did the drums in there. So the double tracked drum is that super trashy garage.
I have to watch that video.
Yeah, it's on Produce Like a Pro. Just look up Bradley Cooper, My Hero, something.
Not the actor Bradley Cooper.
I'm sorry, Bradley Cook. Bradley Cook.
Oh, Bradley Cook. Okay.
Yeah, my bad. Sorry. Thank you for.
I thought that was his name.
Yeah, no, that was early in his career. He was an engineer. Yeah, no.
Before.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. That's bad. Bradley Cook. Yes. Yeah.
Man, I gotta check that out. That's super cool. I'm gonna do that one day.
Yeah.
That'll be great Instagram content.
All right, I want to come over and hear it while you're doing it. I do.
I wonder. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we have a C3 organ, Hammond C3, in the garage. That's the only place it'll fit.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever Kate has to overdub organ on something, our Leslie and everything's just in our garage. I have some gobos that I can put around it.
You ever put a mic through the Leslie?
I haven't yet, but I want to. You have to get like a special pedal for it, right?
I don't actually know.
I think that there's and I haven't been able to find a good one yet.
Okay.
Which is why I haven't done it. But I believe there's like a special pedal you have to get. It's like it looks like a giant, just a giant box,
Okay.
And I believe.
I was going to get on your case. I was going to get on your case while you hadn't done it yet, but now you're telling me. I didn't know that you needed.
I think so. I'm pretty sure.
How does the organ hook up to a Leslie? Is it 1/4 inch to the speaker?
No, it's like a special it's got 8 little
prongs.
Plugs prongs. It's like a whole thing.
Okay.
But that's why I think you have to have this special thing.
Okay.
But I want to do it as soon as I find a good one.
Yeah.
All the ones on Reverb are like, yeah, buy this pedal. It's $400, but it's broken.
Right.
And I'm just like, ugh,
right.
Surely someone's got to have a good one. I'll look again though, but that's something I do want to. I would love to have one of those, or just have the Leslie just to put anything else through.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You could start a whole second guitar career, just guitar through Leslie. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Wow. Soundgarden style.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm the guy that does that. Yeah. Okay, so one thing I was curious about with you was you graduated from USC, correct?
I went to grad school there, so I did a master's and doctorate there.
What? You have a doctorate?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Everyone knows now.
I do have a doctorate.
Okay, did you do recording at all while you were there?
Minimal. Okay. I was always recording, doing sessions.
Right, that's not the question.
But that's not the question. The question is, did I do recording classes? And I took one class there that was Intro to Pro Tools.
Okay.
In 2010.
Okay.
And that was and that's why I use Pro Tools. I tried using Logic and I just couldn't get it together on Logic.
Right, okay.
I tried. But yeah, it was and that's basically, it wasn't even really learning recording techniques. Most of that I just learned from asking engineers questions and trying not to be too annoying about it.
Okay. So I was just curious if there was any school training on your engineering or anything, but you're just fully
not really.
Yeah.
Nothing formal.
Right. Okay.
I would say. But they do have classes at USC that go more into depth about that. I was always just taking drum lessons.
Yeah. I've actually done a little guesting a couple times in those.
Oh, cool.
In the first days of those classes, obviously not last year, but a couple of years before that.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know if you had done that. So you went down this path totally on your own.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And the reason it started is because right around then in 2010, I had a couple of composer friends here in town, like film composers, who were like, "Hey, can you record drums at your house?" And at that time, I was in a little apartment,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, "No, but I can figure it out."
Right. Right.
So, so I had like a Digi 002, which has like 4 mic inputs in it,
Yep.
and it was like 2 overheads, kick and snare.
Wow.
And Peter Erskine basically loaned me some microphones that he had,
Okay.
and was just like, "Here you go, you can borrow these," because So that's what I used. I was like it was a Beta 52, a Beta 57,
Mm-hmm.
and he had 2. I don't even know. They're like Beyerdynamic 703s or something like that. They're like small diaphragm condensers,
Okay.
which actually sound really good.
Yep.
And that's all I had.
Okay.
And a laptop.
Right.
And everything besides that that was that's what I started with. Before that, in Cincinnati, I didn't really do a lot of like self-recording. I mean, I was doing the little amount of session work that was there. I would do recording every once in a while.
Right.
But I was like experimenting with stuff in GarageBand before that.
Right.
The early days of GarageBand.
So
But
you studied with Peter, but that was only at school. You never went to his house, or did you?
well, the way I met Peter was I did this thing called the Henry Mancini Institute,
Okay.
which was at UCLA, and I did that in like 2006.
Okay.
And that's how I met him. So that was the first time I went to his house for a lesson, because he was just one of the teachers at this thing.
Okay.
But then the first 2 or 3 years I was at USC, he still taught at home in his home studio. So I would go out there every week, and I was also his teaching assistant.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I was his teaching assistant for like 5 years. So
okay.
yeah, so it was like I was going out there a lot
Okay.
to either help him with just stuff in his studio, or I would go to sessions with him, which was really that. I mean, I think I probably learned more from doing that than anything else I ever did at school.
And that is huge. I gotta say, that is massive that you got to go watch him do real life stuff and be in a room, watch him do it, be in a room, observe engineers, observe how sessions work, the whole thing.
And everyone was so cool about it too. I mean, Peter would be like, "Hey, whoever, hey Al, can you get an extra pair of headphones so Jake can hear my mix when we're doing this?"
Al Schmidt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or whoever. He probably didn't ask Al directly, but
Right.
Right.
But
yeah, lots of things, and I got to go to a lot of the studios.
Yep.
Like the Village or East West or Capitol.
Yep.
With him, and that was so invaluable to just be able to sit there and like just watch and listen, to how hard he was playing in different situations, or like where he plays, how he's able to play in front or behind a click or right on, how to do that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sight reading, like, little notes that he would make, just little things like that. In addition to just, taking lessons with him where we just would talk about music or, drum, like maybe something that was very drum specific, like an exact beat.
Right. Or
maybe something more conceptual.
Yep.
But that was fun. And he's such a great teacher and person,
Right.
He's so giving.
Right. Did you end up making any relationships with engineers during any of those?
You know what? One of the sessions I went to with Peter was for a movie called Tower Heist.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember that movie.
I mean,
think
the title sounds familiar.
it's like 10 years old now.
Yeah.
And it was Christoph Beck was the composer.
Okay.
And the session was literally Erskine and JR, double drums.
Wow.
In East West 2.
Right.
And it was just them all day playing together. But one of the assistants on that session was this guy named Will Onspach.
Okay.
And he was just an assistant at the time, but now he's a great engineer in town. Does a lot of mixing and recording, and but that's where I met him, was that day. And since then we've just been like really good friends.
Cool.
All these years later. So that was like, yeah. I'm trying to think of who else. I mean, I just met a lot
of guys. Yeah, but I was curious, like if you ended up with a relationship with guys, and yeah,
like Will, and that's really what it's all about for me, is the community of it all, meeting people, friends, just like this.
That's right. And the reason we know each other is we got to double drum together a lot. So.
Oh my God, so meta! Yeah. It's full circle now.
Right? Hey.
Yep, with Andrew Sinowick.
Yep.
And his band.
Yep.
So fun. That was like 4 years ago. Was it 2018 or 17? 18.
It's got to be 18. I think we might have done one in 19. Right?
We did one in 19, and then things shut down.
Yeah.
But that's how we met.
So at home, I've seen, and this will be a general question. I've obviously seen that, you're getting a lot of like cool sounds out there, gated reverb stuff, dry stuff, jazzy stuff, whatever. What's your kind of process for figuring out how to make the sounds sound as they should sound? How's that for a sentence?
I love that.
Yeah.
How to make the sounds sound as they should sound.
Yeah.
My process, I should say, maybe it's not, again, I don't know if this is like textbook or not. It's just my experience, and being trapped in my room all day long for so long now.
Like we do.
What I've found, because I've had other people ask me this, I found that I usually go in order of signal chain. So like I usually start with the drums, right? Like if I need to get a certain sound, I always start with trying to get the sound from the drums as best as I can.
Right.
Knowing that maybe a few steps later, if I put a compressor on it, it's going to react in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Or if I tune a snare drum a certain way, how that's going to react with reverb or a certain type of reverb. Mm-hmm. Like yesterday with this bebop kit, the snare was kind of tuned a little higher and ringy and wide open, but I knew that there was going to be a fair amount of reverb on it because that's what the guy wanted, sort of like an ECM record or something,
Okay, yeah.
So I just kind of knew that if I tune the drum that way and keep it wide open, and then mix it in a certain way to where there's not a lot of close mic, but it's more of a room thing or more overheads.
Right.
That it's gonna sound. It's gonna, on the other side, when it comes back through the speakers at me, it's gonna sound a certain way.
Yep.
So I always start with the drums first and get those sounding how I want them to, as close as I can.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like mic placement and mic choice. Usually I have this XY setup going, just because in my room, I've tried doing a space pair and it just doesn't sound as good in my particular room.
Okay.
I like to do ORTF, which sounds really good in here.
Yeah.
but every time I try to space them apart and get like a wider stereo image, it never quite, it doesn't sound as good to me for whatever reason. Like, I don't know if it's just a phase thing or what, or just how things are reflecting in my room.
Yeah, I would imagine it's that, because you see that kind of table right next to you, and maybe that's something's coming off there affecting that. You know?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but
Yeah.
you know, sometimes I leave the doors open, you know, just to get more ambience or.
Right.
Oh, and a lot of that has to do with dynamics.
Right.
You know, how loud or soft I choose to play the drums.
Yep.
To get a certain sound. You know how that is.
Yep. Would you
Like,
talk about so when you were going to sessions with Erskine, would you talk about any of this stuff, or was it all just observation? Like, he was in business mode, he was in session mode, or
see, the cool thing is most of the time I would drive him to the sessions and back.
okay.
Like, it would be like a whole thing. Not that I didn't go to like hundreds of sessions, but I went to a fair amount with him.
Sure.
And the cool thing is I would just observe and just let him work. But then, like, on the drive back,
Okay.
it would be like, so Peter, why did you do that? Why did you make that choice? Or, you know, he would just start talking about how he played, or, you know, just anything.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of, and sometimes it would be stuff that would come up in lessons. Like, one thing that sticks out of my mind, speaking of dynamics, is one time he said, hey, like, I was recording something on his drums, and he's like, okay, you got to be sure that with this setup, when you're playing that way, you got to hit the floor tom a little harder than you normally would, because it's further away from the overhead mics. So to really make it speak the same way as a rack tom, you know, you got to just lay into that drum a little more than you think you should.
Right. So kind of a minimal miking thing, right? Where you have to play evenly so the mics hear it the way you want. Yeah.
Yeah, just little things like that.
Right.
Or like,
That's,
you know,
that's a huge piece of knowledge, and it's something that you would probably discover down the road on your own. But if you get in that situation, you're like, oh, right, there's a little gem that was handed to me.
And the thing is, he told me that very early on in our lessons. Like, when I really wasn't even thinking about, I wasn't even deep into like recording yet. Right. It was just like, hey, if you ever get called to do this, you got, you know, like, this is just a little thing. Because most of our lessons he would record.
Okay.
You know, because he had everything set up in his studio at all times.
Yep.
And a lot of it was very real world. Like, I remember earlier when you and I were talking about sight reading and memorizing stuff.
Yep.
Like, one of our first lessons, I've told this story a bajillion times, but I'll do it again here because to me, it's so important.
Right.
There was a chart that someone had sent him, like a big band, and it was just like a jingle, like something really silly. And the chart had no information on it, horn hits or anything.
Right.
And so he's like, why don't you go over there and sight read this chart? So I did, and I was playing along with the drum, just like what they had sent him to record on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I sounded pretty bad. It wasn't very good at all, you know, because there was no information on the chart. I'm sitting there playing through it, and I'm like, all this stuff's going by and it's not on the chart.
Right.
You know, and so it's hard to create a shape, an arc, you know, over like a 90-second jingle.
Right.
So I did it again. He's like, okay, let's try again. And I did it again. Maybe I had remembered like one hit that happened in like bar 16 or something.
Right.
And then the third time through, I got like halfway through the track, and he just stopped the track. And he's like, how come you don't know this by now? Like, how have you not memorized this whole thing by now? It's your third time through. It's the third take. I'm just like, I was just like, honestly, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing on the chart. And he's like, well, here's a pencil, like, write everything down in the chart. And I was like, well, how did you memorize it so fast? And he just goes, and this is the lesson to take away. He just goes, because I pay attention.
Bam.
And I was like, oh, I was like, your level of paying attention is like just so far above
Right.
what I think means paying attention.
Right.
Like to him, he's just like absorbing all of it, everything he's hearing, everything he's reading, and he's able to put it together. And that's why he's such a great sight reader. It's not because he's so good at reading rhythms.
Right.
You know, that's just one small piece of it.
Right.
He's listening so intently, you know, and memorizing everything that's going by. And, you know, he's done it so much that helps. But
does he know that
was like,
does he know that you could read waveforms now?
I don't know. He might. It's like, it's just evolving. It's just us evolving as
right.
musicians.
Right.
But that was a big lesson. That was a big takeaway.
Well,
from that.
yeah, that's huge, because that is again, that's something that, like, you know, somebody's pointing out to you, and it fast tracks your brain to like, oh, if I want to get to that level, I better get on this.
Yeah. And I feel like, honestly, I'm still working on being able to do that.
Well, you know, we're all working on all kinds of things always, you know.
Yeah.
I have a Erskine lesson story too, which is slightly similar, but also at his house and reading a chart. It was kind of funny. You know what I mean? It was probably in like 2010, and I went there. I don't need to tell the whole story, but whatever. I went there because I was like, I need to like some guidance right now. You know what I mean? And I'd done a significant amount of things by then, but I played through a track, and I was just like, so, you know, what do you think? Well, he's like, I didn't even turn the click on, and you did fine. You know what I mean? I was like, okay. And we just end up talking the rest of the time. It was kind of cool, but it was the idea that, like, that's how he throws you in and puts the chart in front of you, you know? So, all right, we don't need to talk about Erskine the whole time, but even
no, but a lot of the lessons, and the thing I love about the way he teaches is a lot of it is real world stuff. You know, it's like stuff that he's encountered.
Yeah.
You know, and it turns into a lesson to help you, so that when you encounter that same problem in a real session, or in a real work situation,
right,
you don't completely fold. And honestly, a lot of the stuff, and I've told him this, so he knows, but it's like a lot of the times the lessons are stuff that tripped him up in real life.
Right.
You know, so and it's sort of like he doesn't want that to happen to you.
Right.
Or any of the students. So he makes a lesson out of it.
Right.
You know, which is pretty selfless, and it's also just amazing. I mean, it's just such a great way to learn.
Yeah, well, that's what lessons should be, real world information.
Yeah. It's not like learning calculus and you're like, okay, I'm never going to use this when I get out of school.
Or working through a book that you will never play on a real gig.
Exactly. Or like learning fills, or just things where you're just like, okay, that's a complicated fill.
Right.
That I'll probably never have to use.
Yeah.
Just things like that. But yeah, that's
so obviously you were able to take a lot of that learning style and bring it to your studio to learn engineering, and just be, you know, like as a session drummer from home. Here, you know, here's the thing I find is that, you know, we all work at home so much now that the community aspect of not only working together and at a certain pace and things like that, you know, I encounter a fair amount of people now that don't run their sessions that way, don't know how to communicate. And, you know, sometimes I have to like go, okay, I'm going to help guide this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that kind of real world session experience, and then bringing it home. So not only can you conduct your own session, like, okay, I got X amount of time to get this done. I'm going to get my sound. I'm going to play the tune in a proper amount of time. But if you have a client or clients over, to be able to run the session, because you are not only the drummer, but the engineer. It's your room. The gear is your responsibility. You don't want to look like an idiot. Like if you can't figure out something that's not working, because that happens, you know,
it totally happens. Yeah.
But those kind of observations you were able to make in those situations is huge.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't have all the answers, but I think it's the process. You know, it's the it's the process of being able to, it's problem solving, you know?
Right.
We do that every day. And that's a lot of what engineering is. That's a lot of what drumming is.
Right.
So if you can be humble enough to like realize that you don't know everything,
Mm-hmm.
and also like be aware enough in the moment to where you can be like, okay, like problem solving, like, okay, if it's not, or troubleshooting, if it's not this, then this might be an issue. Or like if someone wants this sort of sound, like in the moment, like you might have an idea for a song and you play it and they're like, yeah, that's not really what I was envisioning or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or can we make it sound more like this? Then it's like you got to be willing to figure it out in the moment. Like the other day, I did a session. It wasn't at my studio; it was at another guy's place,
Mm-hmm.
and I was replacing a loop. I was like for a hip hop thing.
Uh-huh.
I was because the thing is, he like used like devil lock on this loop that he had gotten from somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and it made the cymbals sound way too compressed. Right? Because that's what happens when you're just taking a loop and compress it.
Yeah.
So it was like I was just playing the ride cymbal really light, and he's like, "Oh, it's still like too loud." And I'm like, "Man, I'm like playing is literally like an inch off the cymbal, you know?"
Yeah.
And so finally, I'm like, "Do you have like a chopstick or anything like that? Just something really?" And so, so I played the ride cymbal with a chopstick, you know.
Yep.
And he's like, "That's perfect," you know. It's just like in the moment, like, oh man, like, okay, I'm playing as soft as I can and it's still not working. Like, you just get creative. Like, just what, I mean, I was about to like play the ride cymbal with like my finger or something.
Yeah. Yeah. But you still need the tonal aspect of the wood tool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I tried using like the butt end of a brush,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like too metallic sounding.
Yep. Yep.
Just so that was just like an example, because it happens all the time, you know. And I'm sure you encounter that too, where it's like you're just in the moment, you have to solve the problem, figure it out, you know.
I mean, I think that's really, for me, that's half the fun of session work that I get to do, and then recording myself also. Is just going, you know, like having different tools at my disposal and making, like, literally what you're talking about. Like, well, like I often use like a broom, like the broom stick on the snare, but then something different on the hat, because if you use them as a pair, they're not really that's not making the cymbal sound that you need. You know?
Right.
And that's pretty much a go-to at this point. But there was a decision-making process at a certain point where I was like learning how to make different sounds of like, oh, these things, they're cool when you do one thing, but if you have to play a beat, they're not working together. So what are the things that sound cool together? And those combinations of different types of sticks, like that's what I eat up.
Yeah. And then you file it away when it works.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, mental note, that works. And then you do it like 20 more times. And then when that situation comes up the 21st time, you're just like, without even thinking about it, you're like that. Okay, I know this is going to sound perfect
right
on this song. And then whoever you're working for is like, wow, that sounds perfect.
Right. And they sometimes they don't even notice. I mean, they notice that it sounds right, but they don't care what you're doing. They're just like, cool, thanks, that works.
But if you did it, if hadn't you known to do that, they would be sitting there going, something about this, like, that just sounds too, like there's just too much attack on the snare or something, like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they would be sitting and they don't know.
Right.
But when you just do the right thing without thinking about it, that's the whole thing we're trying to go for, right? Is
right.
Just to make it sound like whatever you play belongs in that track.
Right.
You know, at that moment. So yeah, I know you're totally like in that same headspace. Has nothing to do with chops either. Or drum stuff, you know. I just had to like reiterate that.
So you have a lot of, like, I've just seen through YouTube, Instagram, whatever, you have a lot of cool like drum kits. You could drum kit, the recording customs, you know, other things. Did your drum buying process like kind of accelerate, you know, because of your studio and going like, oh, I need this sound. I need like that palette.
Yep. Yeah. Well, when I moved here, I basically moved to LA and when I moved here from Cincinnati, I packed up I had a Saturn Ion at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I packed everything into that car that I could and moved here. Like I just drove here.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a little bebop kit in the car
Mm-hmm.
and like a Yamaha Maple Custom Absolute.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, and it was like only a 20-inch bass drum, and like the snare, basically both snare drums were the same size.
Yep.
They're both Maple kits.
Right.
And I had like 3 or 4 cymbals total.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically being here and someone says, hey, can you play on this rock track of mine? It needs to sound like huge. And then you're like, yeah, but I only have like an 18-inch bass drum, or
Right.
which you can make an 18 sound pretty big if you know what you're doing.
18s are some of my favorite.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
for the thing that they were going for, they had a specific sound in mind.
Sure.
You need a 22.
Right.
You can do it with a 20 kind of, but
Right.
part of it was just that having that big, and I was like, okay, I need to get a bigger bass drum. I need bigger drums.
Yep. Yep.
So that just sort of started that process of, oh, I need this thing now to get that sound so that when it happens again, I'm not just caught like, not knowing what I'm doing.
Right. And like, did you have a similar thing with microphones? Are you switching mics a lot, or are you they kind of have their places, like your overheads are your overheads, or are you switching?
For the most part, I kind of leave things
Mm-hmm.
how they are, unless someone has something very specific that they want. Like there's this one producer I work for, and pretty much every time they're like, hey, can you use the Coles for overheads and do like a Glenn Johns thing?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Yep.
So unless someone has something really specific, like I said, I tried to start with just the drums first, and then
Right.
Because once you get things kind of like in phase and working together in a good way, I hate to like disturb that too much.
I mean, that should, between just your drum sound off the floor and then where you set your mics, that should be 90%.
Yeah.
Unless obviously you need like the gated reverb Phil Collins thing, then that's a different story. But I think 9 times out of 10, that's your drum sound right there.
Yeah, and I also think like just the amount of variables in any one situation. Like the more variables you introduce, the less my ears are going to go like, I know what this is going to sound like on the other side of the glass, so to speak.
So you're talking, what you mean is like by switching mics around.
If I change too many things,
yeah,
before I even record a note, then it starts, things get out of focus for me. Whereas like I would rather just keep the microphone set up first and set up the drums that I know I need to get that sound, and then go, okay, now what's missing from this puzzle?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, maybe if I move the position of the overheads, it'll get more of the sound I'm going for.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to put a microphone in the other room. Maybe this happened a couple weeks ago. Like usually I have 414 set up just on toms because I like them. They sound good to me.
Yep.
They make they're nice to cymbals,
Yes.
which sometimes isn't always the case with 421s.
Right.
But this particular producer was like, hey, I don't want to have to gate my toms. We're going for like a really specific like 70s sound.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I'll use 421s on the toms. That's cool.
Yep.
So I just swapped them out, and it was no big deal. And it sounded great. Just like little things like that, where it's like, I know he didn't want to have, he wanted it to be very focused, so like he didn't want a lot of bleed.
Yep.
Getting into those 414s, a lot of spillage from other cymbals or other drums.
Right.
And so that's why I was like, easy, like use 421s instead.
Yep.
Like, because he didn't want to gate anything. So just little things like that.
Yeah, that's kind of my evolving thing right now is understanding not only the drums but what mics I own and in what setups, and they can do certain things, and it takes a lot of experimenting, and some of it I figured out because I've demoed mics for certain companies, and it's forced me to go like, oh, do they work here? Do they work here? Blah blah blah. But it's been cool because, some sounds that I've discovered are even like, let's say, tighter. Like my M160s in a ORTF sound really tight, and I was like, oh, okay, so if I need that, that's a great way to go. You know what I mean? Those specific mics in that position.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're like hypercardioid, so they're super tight sounding. Or like on hi-hat, like just
yeah.
those M160s are great.
Yeah.
Or
brighter mics for like a rock thing. It's like it's really got to be exciting and bright. So not only am I going to have bright cymbals, but I'm going to use brighter microphones. So it's just like,
yeah.
So
like one thing I'll do is, and I'm sure you've experimented with this because it's a pretty common thing, is having like a 57 and a 451 on snare top.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically always have those two set up. Not that I'm always using both of them,
right?
But like yesterday on this guy's session, I just think because it just happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was like one of the things was very like only 2s and 4s on the snare, like big fat sound. So like I pulled that 451 way down. Like it was just like I only need the 57 to get this thing.
Yep.
But then very next song was like Bebop City. And with the 451s, they're a lot more responsive, and they pick up all those little ghost notes that you play, and like when you're playing jazz, it picks up all those little notes really well, and it's very crisp and detailed sounding compared to a 57.
Right.
So like I use more of that mic. I use more of the 451 than I did the 57 for that thing.
Right. Not compressed.
And what's that?
451 is not compressed.
Not for that.
Okay.
But sometimes I will, like like for if I want to get some hair on it or something.
Yeah.
Put it through like one of these channels on the 1178 here.
Right. So sometimes you're using the two snare mics as in combination, but you're also just making a sonic choice of like, oh, this is the right snare mic for this track.
Yeah, and I'm recording both of them, but then I'm just kind of moving faders up and down when we're listening back.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how even just that one little thing can help shape every choice you make shapes the sound, right?
Yeah.
So just making those little decisions can sometimes make just enough of a difference to like make something sound convincing,
Right. Totally. Yep. Yeah, man. I love it. And what I see that FET, is that an actual Neumann FET?
It is, but it's one of the reissue ones. Or I think they call it collector's edition. It's not a vintage one.
You like it? It's good?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
But you know what? The other day, I did a session at a different guy's house, and they had one of the Flea 47s. I don't know if it's a FET mic. Or the Flea, I'd have to look it up. I don't know if it's like a tube 47 or a...
Okay.
It's basically like this company Flea. It's their version. Whoa.
Okay. I don't know that company.
It sounded awesome though. It was amazing.
Okay.
So that's one company where I would say like they can do that really well. I have to check out some of the other. There's so many companies do their version of it now.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of consumer friendly FET mics out there now, where it used to be like you either had the Neumann or you didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, you either had to spend $6,000 or whatever.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, they're not cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I have a D12 next to that, like an old D12.
Oh yeah,
that's another mic where it's like it sounds great, but sometimes if somebody wants something more modern sounding, I have other kick mics that are like more modern sounding, or like that are kind of like pre-EQ'd, pre-scooped sounding kick mics.
Yeah, the D12 is very specific to me.
Yeah.
It's a very defined sound of what it is. But man, it's especially if you want the Beatles sound or like on 70s, like single-headed kick mic, like you got back there, like that's like, oh yeah, there it is. Right, here we go. Cool.
It's amazing. And I have like a DBX 160 here.
Yep.
You know, which most of the time, if I use that on kick, like the needle's like not even moving.
Right.
You just kind of see the red light every once in a while.
Yep. Yeah, because you can easily destroy your kick drum sound if you rock that thing a little too much.
Yeah, but somehow it sounds amazing. It just adds like a little bit of like point to it.
Yep.
Without doing very much at all.
Right.
So, but that's another in combination with that D12 on a single-headed kick drum.
Right. What are your overheads there?
Those are DPA 4011s. Do you know DPA, the company DPA?
Nope.
They're a Danish company.
Okay.
And they're basically like reference style mics.
Okay.
So they're very flat.
Okay.
There's not like any weird bumps in the frequency spectrum. And this engineer, Rich Breen, he's got some of the most amazing ears and just mixing sensibilities out of all the guys I know. He recommended those, and they're just nice. They just sound good, you know. And for me, like a lot of times, overheads, I don't really mess with the overheads that much.
Okay.
When I'm recording, if someone else is mixing it, or someone else is going to be processing the mics.
Right. So you stay in XY pretty much with those mics.
Yeah, or ORTF if I want it just a little wider sounding.
Right.
I don't mess with them very much because to me that's just like a nice sound. It's like a nice home base for the whole drum set.
Yeah. So sorry. I had to check something else, so I lost my train of thought here.
It's okay.
So you're pulling drums out, but you're just mostly pulling the mics away and just setting most of the mics back up. That's kind of what I do too, unless I have the opportunity to get very specific.
And honestly, you go to any studio in town,
right?
Most of the time, those are the mics they're going to have set up. Yeah, well, I just mean like for any old session, like, wait, where'd it go? There we go. You walk in, it's like, okay, maybe a D112 on the kick, you know, 47 on the, also on the kick, 57 on the snare.
Right. I also find that like certain studios, you know, you're going to get a lot of things. So Sunset Sound, you're going to see a lot of 67s.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's like 67 City over there.
Like, you go to East West, they're going to have C12s on the overheads.
Exactly.
That's just, and so it's just like most studios in town already do that. They have sort of like their go-to.
Yeah.
Unless the engineer specifies like what they want, or or so many mics are in use at that time that they have to resort to some other choice.
Right. Yeah, I had that at East West recently. There was a mic battle going on between a couple different rooms.
Yeah, it's like if they have an orchestral session in one room, and you're in like Studio 3 or something, you're getting the bottom of the barrel. No,
yeah. I mean that's a relative term, but yes, yeah.
Bottom, and by bottom of the barrel, I mean you have to use the 49s or whatever, you know, for rooms instead of.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, too bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of keep them set up. But then what I'll do is sometimes I'll have like just a mono overhead.
Yep.
You know, that then I can smash that or destroy it or affect it somehow. And that could become a vibe. And then I can just mute those or pull them way down in the mix.
Yep.
But then if I send it off and whoever's, you know, mixing it or whatever says, you know what, I don't really like that. I just wish it was just like a normal sound. Then they can pull those back in.
Yep.
and then do whatever with them. So that way it's not like 3 weeks later after I've already torn down this kit and, you know, who knows what else has happened.
Right.
They don't come back and go, yeah, can you re-record this? And, you know.
Right. Yeah, options. Well-defined options.
Yeah, exactly. So that's for home recording, you know, when you're just switching things in and out all the time, that's been a big thing for me, is like being efficient.
Yep.
And also giving enough options, which is why, you know, I'm recording 12 to 16 microphones at a time.
Right.
Not that you're going to use all of them.
Usually not.
No, not at all. I mean, sometimes there's been things where I literally mute everything except for like 3 mics.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2 mics.
Yeah. Those are usually my favorite sounds.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's just because it's just cool. It just sounds cool, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Got a vibe.
Yeah.
But
because again, your drums are making the sound.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
That's like the old joke. Like, when someone, I always heard it was Ray Brown, you know? Oh man, your bass sounds so good. Oh yeah? How's it sound now?
Right? Exactly. I think that's the perfect stopping point right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You make the sound.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. All these could go on for like hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How long have we been talking? An hour.
Just over an hour. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
I congratulate anyone that's made it to the end. Hopefully you've learned something.
You made it entertaining, man.
Hey, you made it entertaining.
Well, I think you were 51% of it.
Okay, well, I'll take it.